Pat and Sarah asked if I would say a few words about Ken tonight because my connection to Ken goes back probably longer than anybody else in this room. Ken and I grew up in the north end of Halifax, living within a block and a half of each other. And during the war years, we went to school at Bloomfield. And in later years, Ken and I talked a lot about that because I think it was one of our happiest experiences that we ever had. We had a new principal at Bloomfield School by the name of Tom Parker. Now, some of our parents were rather concerned about this man because he came from the prairies and he made no secret of the fact that he was CCF. So some of our parents thought for sure he must be a communist. Anyway, he soon changed that opinion and started the first PTA in Halifax. He also was very much involved in having a strong school spirit. Those days we didn't have cars, we walked or biked. We didn't have television. We had to make our own amusement. And so he started, Tom Parker, at Bloomfield School, a glee club, directed by nobody else but Portia White's brother Bill. He started a drama club. We had our own newsletter. We had our own debating club, and very strong in sports. And we were very proud of all the banners that was in our assembly hall. And Ken made no secret afterwards in telling people in his class and on the board how the room that they were sitting in was built upon where he had once played rugby. We had such a strong spirit at Bloomfield School. There was 250 at the most in the junior high. And then we graduated to Queen Elizabeth High School. And it was a culture shock to many of us. Imagine, 9 grade 10s. So maybe the 35 students that graduated from grade 9 at Bloomfield arrived here at the Queen Elizabeth High School and found ourselves scattered in classrooms where we hardly knew anybody. For a lot of us, that was a terrible change in our lives, but not for Ken. Ken, being Ken, took it all in his stride and went happily on his way, making new friends everywhere he went. After high school, Ken and I sort of lost track of each other as we went separate ways. And it wasn't until I think it was around 1970, 1971, when I had a meeting of the Staff Association at Dow in this very building, maybe in this very room. And as I was walking down the corridor out there was this man coming towards me, which looked quite familiar to me. And he sort of looked at me, and we sort of nodded, and he went his way, and I came into my meeting. After the meeting, when I went back out in the hall, sure enough, here he was coming along the hall again. And we sort of stopped and looked at each other, and he said, "Blanche?" And I said, "Ken?" And so we had connected again, and we spent a bit of time talking about what had happened in our lives since we had last seen each other. Now, I worked on the opposite end of campus, so I didn't get to see him too much until we retired. And then we both became members of the Rozee Retirees Association. Now, this might come as a surprise to you, probably not to Pat, but sometimes Ken could be a bit forgetful. Now, we had a membership fee, a big fee, $20 a year. And I happened to be the chair of the membership committee. Well, Ken hadn't paid his dues. So I sent out my little friendly reminder to him. No response. Another friendly reminder. No response. The next year came, and I sent out a reminder saying, that he owed us for 2 years' dues, the big total of $40. No response. Well, after a couple of reminders and a couple of messages on his phone and not hearing back from him, he got my standard but nice letter saying that he was in arrears for $40 and that unless it was paid, I could only sadly assume that he no longer wanted to be a member of the ADRP. Well, we had a general meeting the next month, and then I was on the door checking the members as they come in, taking their money, and along comes Ken. And he stands there and he said, Blanche, you wouldn't really cancel my membership, would you? And I said, Ken, do you want to take a wager on that? Very sheepishly, he handed me over the $40 and he said, I won't forget again. Then a little later on, Ken became a member of the board of the Dalhousie Retirees, and he and I ended up being co-editors of our newsletter. And he was up into our very last newsletter. And this newsletter, I'm afraid, I have to do without him. Also, along that time, he became a member of SCANS when we first started. The first day of registration, Ken was there. And he became so interested in SCANS that it wasn't long before we had him instructing classes for us. And it wasn't long after that he became a member of our board and was our president after me. For once he followed me. And many times that we would have a meeting in the morning and Ken would have a class or appointment in the afternoon, and he would come for lunch at our house. It didn't take him long to discover that my husband, Tom, had been a history high school teacher, and that one of the subjects he taught was ancient history. Well, I can tell you, from that moment on, I hardly got a word in edgewise. My duty was to keep his teapot full and lots of cookies on the table for him to munch on. And I was subjected to some of the worst jokes, history jokes and puns, between Tom and Ken that anyone would ever have to survive. Well, I know that how much we all will miss Ken. I still wake up in the morning and can't believe it. And I would like to just close with something that I received as an email. Upon hearing about Ken's passing, our office administrator, Allison Cunningham, sent us all a memo. And it said exactly what we all felt Ken was. And if you don't mind, Allison, I would like to read it. And here's what she sent to the board. I knew Ken for only a short time compared to the rest of you. For all the roles that Ken played, historian, father, scientist, husband, SCANS chair, etc., I also knew him as my employer. For decisive, passionate in his beliefs, funny, it seems he always knew when to direct, when to listen, and when to ignore. As much as this loss will hurt so many of you, I am so glad that I had the opportunity to meet him. And I think that says it all about Ken. And I just like to think sometimes when I think about him gone, that Ken's up there somewhere in the heavens, with the twinkle still in his eye, rubbing his beard, and thinking, now how can I start a branch of the Seniors College up here in the heavens?
Thank, thank you. I'd like to introduce Audith Wynot, who is Ken's granddaughter.